dinner happening. And if everybody's okay, we'll be recording the session. If anybody has any objections, kindly let us know.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
over to you, Ali.
perfect. Thanks, Bilal. We'll try and familiarization for these slides. Okay, so where are we just now? We're with the Pathways and Toastmaster website. So I've put a few slides together, which hopefully make sense. I'm hoping this becomes a bit more interactive because if it involves me presenting for 15 minutes, that will feel like an age, especially after the amount of presenting I've done today. But hopefully we're all here to understand a little bit more about Pathways and the TM website. Can you all see that on the screen?
Yes.
Yes, Ali. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Good start. Okay. So tonight's agenda, based on the email that was sent around, there are 6 things we're trying to cover off today. Benefits of Pathways. So why are we doing this and what is Pathways, and probably a bit of introduction there. Identifying that level 1 project and what that means. Piece on evaluation forms. I think this is something that as a club we're not very good at in terms of when it comes to evaluation. A lot of that seems to be done by using one form that is a copy of something else that someone's found in the past, if it's actually ever done. So that's a question there in terms of how we get better, but let's talk about best practice on that one. Some sending evaluations via the website. I think those two sort of go hand in hand. And then a final piece on beyond level 1, what's next. So final thing, we will talk about useful websites. Of course, the Toastmaster website there, but what you can do and with that in there. Everybody okay with that? Everybody here expecting what was on that list? Cool. We haven't been shortchanging you based on this agenda. Okay, so benefits of Pathways. Very much twofold, although I've got 4 points in here, but one of them is about the club. The other one is about you as a person, and it's far more about you as a person and your development, but there are benefits for the club in this. So in terms of what I've noted down, 4 key areas. So Pathways gives a structure to the journey, and it does feel very corporate in there, but the idea of customized learning, there's certain things that as Toastmaster you've signed up to do. So I'm on the presentation mastery path. So that is slightly different to any of the other ones. So there's a little bit of tailoring in there in terms of towards my goals in that one. So hopefully when you joined and you started out, you were asked to select one of the pathways. By selecting that pathway, it'll have specific goals and is tailored slightly for you. Although I'm saying it has specific goals, I think the other thing around that is the diverse skill base. So as you run through the pathways, each of the pathways, there will be specific objectives or goals that take place in each speech. And that's quite interesting, actually, because it means that you're not doing the same thing over and over. And that, one speech you might be looking to test your vocal variety. The next time it'll be about structure. And actually, the other one might be about your learning style. So the opportunity to go through this and change the emphasis of each speech as you go through and have that sort of layering effect of starting off with something relatively straightforward and then adding on more and more layers. Now that sounds like we're just telling you you've got to do a speech on a specific thing or subject, but actually it's not as rigid as it possibly could be or how it was in the past. And there's very much that scope to make each speech your own. So I think that's something that certainly we hear a lot about, is that sometimes my speech says I need to do this, and I was like, well, yeah, but we've heard that type of speech many times, and people make it their own, including their own spin on it. The final bit, and probably the most important in terms of why we want people to be progressing through pathways, recognition certification. And from that, I don't necessarily mean, yes, you get a nice printed certificate at the end of it, but it's a useful piece, yardstick to monitor progress. And I think I fall into this habit of turning up every fortnight to a meeting and doing what I do, and then never really taking a step back and going, actually, have I progressed over the last 3, 6, 9 months? And certainly when I've been forced to do that in the last year or so, thinking back to the 3 years I've been in Toastmasters, I do see that progression. Pathways is a really good way of just having that yardstick in there. I want to throw it open to the floor. Anybody have any other thoughts in terms of the ideas behind pathways or any other bits that you want to contribute here? Is this what you thought it was going to be?
Christina has her hand raised.
She's never once. Go on, dive in. I was expecting you. I wasn't.
I was going to
on
add
ceremony there.
no. I was just monitoring the gallery to see if there are any other hands before mine. But I've got a point of reference and a question, and it's kind of a half question, because a common misconception that I had when I first started was that you had to do every single project in strict project order as it showed on the Toastmaster website. Is that a correct conception, or is there a bit more flexibility as to how you can do your pathway?
Well, my take would be that the answer is there's none, but you probably not want to start at the level 4 stuff before you've done the level 1. But yeah, my take on it would be that all you need to do is to do any part of this, it's around speaking to your VPE to say, I'd like to do a speech in a week's time or in the next meeting. At that point, no one's checking to see, is it done in order? And it'll just, the only checks that anyone will do is, has Christina or anyone else done all, have you ticked off all the boxes rather than do them in order?
Yeah,
because well, kind of felt like a very loaded question, so I'm trying to work.
Yeah, because the point I wanted to make was that I don't know what it's like for the other pathways, but certainly for mine, on feedback and evaluation, there's 3 components to that project, and one of them is evaluations. And I know for a fact virtually everyone on this call have done evaluations very, very early in their level 1 journeys. And that harks back to what you were saying, Ali, about, we're all doing really hard work, but not necessarily maybe rewarding ourselves. So I think that's quite important. And the other thing I wanted to add to your pathways track was that some of you might have recalled that John Cox had said, well, actually, if you want to be a judge at divisional contests, you need a minimum of level 2 to do that. And it's just, not only do you get the reward from achieving all your pathways, there are further opportunities open to you beyond the envelope of your club if you do progress along pathways. So it's something else to consider. And I'll shut up now. Thanks, Ali.
No worries. Any other things to add? Any questions? Okay, right. So educational track. So what I'm going to do is just run through my take on this. Now, this is not by any means, this is me spending 15 minutes making some screenshots. So there is no corporate piece on here, and I'm sure I'll get shouted down at some point when I've done something wrong. But effectively, onto the Toastmasters International website. Hopefully everybody's got the ability to log in, and hopefully you're not logging in with a different email address, but log in with email and password, and that should bring you to a screen that looks something like this. Now, is everybody up to that stage just now in terms of being able to log into Toastmasters International?
Yes, all nods.
All nods, good stuff. Okay, so effectively, where are we going there? We're going to, you'd have thought, given its pathways, you would be picking on pathways, but instead, no, we're going to Basecamp, which is always a bit worrying because I'm going to get my hiking gear on, but off to Basecamp. And when we do that, it should open up pathways. So, there's definitely room for scope for improvement there in terms of signposting. It feels like one of my speeches, actually, in terms of lack of signposts. But you're into Basecamp, from Basecamp into Toastmasters pathways, and you should see all of this type of thing. Has anybody got this far so far? Anybody not on that? So, okay, this could be the whole teaching my grant to suck eggs, please, but there we go. Okay, so in terms of one of the things I want to talk you through here is I am doing presentation mastery. So what I want to do is to go in and open the curriculum in terms of what I'm doing. So I'd click on that open curriculum. I'd hope that pop-ups are doing what they're supposed to do and it's working properly. And as we do that, we get into my presentation mastery piece. So as you see, the levels are down the left-hand side. In order to complete the whole presentation mastery, I would need to do all 5 levels and the path completion, and then that gets ticked off. I've clicked into level 1, and what you can see is my progress through level 1. Get a little bit concerned that it's showing 50% when I think it's 50% of presentation mastery rather than at level 1, and it shows here one level, so level 1, how many parts you've got to do. So for each of these, for the icebreaker, for that speech, you can click on here, launch that, and it's going to give you the training course or the window around that piece. Everybody done that so far? Okay, so all good. What I've got in here is just something that I think is quite useful or quite interesting on these pieces. When you go in, you navigate using this whole going through, and it can be that if you do halfway through something and you want to jump back to it, or one of the things I was doing recently, someone was asking, I've got an evaluation for a first speech, how do I do that? Well, you can actually go into your own one and get that evaluation resource if you want. So the links to save those files are in there. The other thing I did want to point out was, I think can be really useful to look at I think all of them, and I may well be wrong, but I think all of these sort of training vignettes or whatever have feedback of before and after. It's that idea of what did you think of something before? What did you think about it after? I'm not particularly tactful in my feedback, but we'll see how that goes. We managed to go from a 2 to a 3, so maybe that wasn't a bad thing. But yeah, in terms of being able to do that piece, and certainly it's probably worth looking back at those at the end of after delivering the speech to understand the development that took place on them. So one of the things that we want to do here is, once you've done all these and you get to this point of presentation mastery and you've completed the level, once you've done that, it would say, it's slightly different if you haven't finished it, and it would say there's a button to press to effectively submit. Once you submit, what will happen is, in a couple of places, the Vice President of Education will get something here. They'll get basically within their equivalent of I could do it actually. I could just show. It's probably easier to do. There'll be a note that comes up for your VPE to sign it off. They'll go in, do a quick check that against the records to make sure people had done their presentations, and then what they would do once they've signed that off is submit the education award within the pathways, so within the section here. And I've lost my cursor, which is always useful. Okay. Any questions so far about what I'm muttering on about in terms of what you're expecting in the actual training? So just to go in terms of, you're going in at the, come on. Going in here to your curriculum, doing that curriculum. Once you've finished those, effectively it says view certificate, but before that there is a button that would submit. That submission is made to the VPE, they'll sign that off, and then you will get some time will go by, depending on how good your VPE is. If it's me, it might take a little while. Certificate in there, and then the certificate will look something like that. So you get a certificate, and that's great because you get a bit of paper that we presented to you at your meeting. For Claire's benefit, it probably isn't presented at a meeting in paper. It's probably a PDF or something that's sent out. I don't know what John does these days, but I'm assuming that he's not sending them in by the post. So from that point, we've got, that's how we complete these. I suppose that the piece for me is, why are we doing it? Obviously, there's the individual piece, but also for the club itself, we have different awards that we're looking to get to. So goals for the year, we're looking to meet. We've currently met three of the goals. Looking to get 5 to become a distinguished club, 7 to be a selecting distinguished club, and President's distinguished club is 9. So there's bits on there for each club around education, membership, training, administration. So the training is that we turn up to club officer meetings and training. Administration is very much, do we pay on time? Do we have enough new members? But the big one that I'm sort of charged with as VPE is making sure that we get enough level 1, level 2, level 3 awards. And for each of the number of awards we get through, we can get points towards these goals here. And that's nice for the club to be able to be recognised as a select or a president's distinguished. And I think there's a bit of kudos that comes with that as well. Any questions so far? Okay, so obviously great for the club if we can get these. The reason we're having this, and I'm trying to push that a little bit, is the fact that we've done an awful lot of speeches in the last few months, but there's not been very many level 1 submissions in here. And we're certainly trying to just move that through. I have no concerns in terms of we should get through that by June time. I'm pretty sure we will be in a much better place, but we haven't ticked off as many of the education goals as we would have liked. The one thing that we were being asked about a lot was about evaluations. So as part of the pathways piece, we can click in. I'm gonna have to keep going back, sorry. Within this, we've got evaluation, speech evaluation. So you can look at your own speech evaluations, and you can by going into the speech evaluation piece, you can go and find the evaluations for the speeches that you're going to be evaluating. Claire, I'm not sure in terms of how structured John is in terms of or whoever's running the no excuses piece, but do you tend to see the evaluation criteria? Do people send forms through beforehand, or is it more someone turns up and we'll do an evaluation at the time?
So I've only done one speech myself, and I had the evaluation emailed to me.
Okay. So it sounds like someone's actually done that, whereas I think we've possibly not been very disciplined with that, in the sense of sending that speech beforehand so that people can see what it is that I'm going to evaluate type thing becomes quite important. And I think it's something that would be really useful, because the evaluations do differ depending on the speech objectives, that sort of thing. So we can go into pathways and get the evaluation resources from that. So you can search in here at the different evaluation criteria, so the resources. So it may well be evaluation feedback, evaluation 1, 2, 3, connecting with your audience, team building, for example. They're all going to have very different objectives or notes to that evaluator. So certainly the one that I've taken here, first speech. So what is the evaluator looking for? Is it well organized? Just focus very much on the style, maybe a lot of prompts that are in there. So that's one thing that's in here, and probably, Claire, because you're online and it's been shared online, that's probably a lot better than what we see in our meetings. But actually, one of the things, I started during lockdowns, so one of the things back in 2020, 2021 was that a lot of the evaluations were done and people wrote them up in the forms, saved them, and been able to share that feedback. So you can have feedback requests and been able to look at all those there. And that's certainly something in my pathways that I can look at and say, actually, can I see my feedback from previous speeches? And it's quite useful when you have 5 or 6 that you can then look back at and go, okay, am I getting the same feedback repeatedly? Obviously, we've got the little bits of paper, and I suppose for Claire's benefit, we'll get the text message, the chat that comes through in terms of the private messages, and some people will screen scrape them or use them, and I know that some people take away their little bits of paper from the meetings. Some people burn them, some people read them, but from that point of view, just being able to go back and think, am I getting similar feedback? Has the feedback that I was getting 6 months ago, is it the same feedback, or have things moved on? Have things changed? That can be a really useful piece. But the ability to request and share feedback is something that we can do on the website here and be able to use. So that was really it in terms of the whistle stop tour for pathways and what we were using it for. I suppose I was going to throw over to Christina now on things around the website and things that I've missed, because I've obviously missed quite a bit. But it should be relatively straightforward to use. There's a bit of faff around a setup. I don't think it's a perfect system at all, and sometimes people do end up, me included, clicking around looking for answers. I suppose that the big thing is just, if in doubt, ask someone, and hopefully they've done it before.
Well, before you do hand over, Ali, I was going to ask a few more little loaded questions, if that's all right.
That job interview that was.
No. I was going to ask, what do you find are the common pitfalls when it comes to members completing level 1, particularly when they know they've done all the projects? You as a Toastmasters member know you've done all the projects, but you're still not showing as 100%. Like, what sort of common?
I think there's a.
This feels
like any corporate IT type question, that it's almost like you get into the training and you've got to click all the way through and make sure you've clicked every button in there. And I'm sure, like any piece, that you'll be listening to those videos and watching them 3 times over, but sometimes you get into there, it's like, I think if you do skip bits, it's quite easy to the circles aren't complete, so you can quite easily find out where you've done it, but it is a bit annoying that you thought you'd done something and you go back into it and do it. I think that would be the key one. The other thing can be is just making sure that people are aware where you are on that process, and making sure that you complete those, because some people get into the habit of, I want to do a speech, but they don't necessarily do the speeches based on pathways, and obviously that becomes somewhat problematic if they've been here for a year and they don't see that progress, or they don't have a tangible progression.
Yeah, and that's where I personally advocate looking at project checklists. So when you log into your pathways, you might notice there's that little widget at the bottom, which has got the drop-down menu, and that can give you an at-a-glance overview of exactly what it is required for whatever pathway you're on. And it doesn't even matter if you've not completed level 1, you can have a fast forward look to level 2 and level 3. Because the most challenging bit is level 1 is 6 projects, if I'm not mistaken, whereas level 2 is 3 and level 3 is 3. It's half the work. So we know it does feel like sometimes it's like just going on forever and dragging on forever, but once you get over level 1, you've done the hard bit, believe it or not. And the other thing I would add is what I found is that, the evaluation before starting a project and after, even just not completing that little quiz will sometimes stop you from looking like you've achieved 100%. So you do have to do everything, which is where that widget can really just help you just identify, oh yeah, I've not watched that video, I've not provided some evaluation. So just look out for that. Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask?
I don't have a question. It's more of a point, is that that evaluation tool was really useful. So I didn't even know that was a thing. So like when you evaluated, I had no idea that there was actual checklists. I've just been looking at it while you've been doing it, like about when you're evaluating someone for body language. Like I would just go off the basic thing. So I didn't know that was an actual resource where you could look at with actual things to look at and mark for someone. So again, I didn't know that was a thing. So obviously I've marked off all the pathways that I've done, which I'm quite tech savvy. But I think maybe just my personal opinion is to have like a 5-minute video where it kind of explains it for all new beginners. Because I remember when I first did it, I think Ali's mentioned it before, it's not a very smooth website to get your head around. It's very confusing. So for people that aren't very tech savvy, they might not have a clue what to do with it. And for evaluating as well, I think it was me that messaged Ali being like, I'm evaluating, what the hell do I do? And then Ali had to send me that thing over. But I actually had no idea there's that massive thing of like, well, if you're evaluating body language, here's the check marks to look at. So I think it then gives the person that's speaking really valuable feedback rather than my opinion of what I think body language is. Does that make sense? So I actually didn't know that was even a thing. So that's been really useful for me.
Yeah. Thank you, Daniel. Yeah, certainly the resources bit on the website means that if you know what particular project that you're evaluating for your speaker, you can actually look it up as a keyword. So for example, if you were to pop in vocal variety into the search engine, that will throw up the evaluation for that particular project, which I think is common to a lot of the pathways that are out there.
Yeah, I think sometimes they've got their own, sometimes it's a fairly straightforward or fairly defined piece. But yeah, I think I think there's probably something around the standard of, not standard evaluation, that's the wrong word, but evaluations and what people are looking for, and certainly I know that a lot of the ones we have at the club are quite different to what you would, the evaluation criteria in a competition. And certainly people have talked in the past around a lot of the evaluation tends to be on the substance rather than the structure, the style rather than the structure of the speech. And in the competitions, content is a big thing, whereas actually very seldom do we touch on content and did people have a coherent argument and structures, etc. It's very much around, did you stand funny? Did your hands do these things? Obviously, my hands always do these things, but fair enough. So yeah, I think that's probably it from on that one. The website, we're playing with the hand we've got. It's not the best website. It's absolutely frustrating when you got to ask 3 people to do something very simple. And certainly I find that with the leadership team there are conversations that we have around how do I do this, which should be very simple, like finding people's addresses, and you just, yeah. But it is what it is at the moment, so that's what it is. We're told it's all getting revamped in some point next year, but what that means, I'm not sure, and whether that necessarily means an improvement, I don't know. But no, I think from my point of view, great to hear that everybody has signed up to Pathways and moving through there. I think going forward for our club, I'd like to see a lot more of the feedback going online and being documented, because I think that's really important. And also the feedback, the evaluation forms, or the proper evaluation forms are being used. I suppose the difficulty we've got is it does rely on speakers sending their introductions through more than 20 minutes before the meeting. And I know we're not necessarily all in the habit of doing those things.
Yeah, I would agree that sharing the evaluation forms after the meeting electronically is something that's it's not just newer members, it's even experienced members who've been at the club a long time. That just doesn't seem to happen. Whilst we've got a decently sized captured audience, would anyone be interested in seeing how to practically post the forms via TI? With that, yeah, okay, I can see a few nods. I am not Zoom literate at all, folks, so bear with me. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Was it that was you? That was you saying you're going to do it? That's fine. Perfect.
Yeah.
Well done.
I'm going to try badly.
I genuinely thought you stitched me up there and was like, "Well, we'll get Ali to do it." I was
like, okay.
It should just be the share screen.
Yeah. So it's saying start broadcast, and I'm guessing. Can you all see this screen still? Nope.
I'm seeing a screen broadcast, please.
Yeah, okay, you're seeing what I'm seeing. Okay, it says I'm sharing the screen. I told you. Can you see my home screen now?
Yep.
I'm kind of relying on you to feedback.
It's like it is. Yeah.
Yep, okay, brilliant. Okay, so right, so you're in your, yep, is that all jumping ahead as it should? Fantastic. Okay, so hopefully you all recognize this screen. You're all on Pathways, so fantastic. So can you all see at the top here a search button?
Yeah.
So say for example, and lovely Caroline, I'm going to volunteer your lovely self. Once you know that you've signed on via Pathways, you selected No Excuses or East Midlands as your club. If you click on this search button here, I just need, there we are. If I then go, ooh, what am I doing? Oh, sorry. Let's try that again. So if I were then to go, I need my keypad to show up. Sorry, team. Fudge. So all you do is you just search for the person who appear on my iPad because I never use it. Sorry. This works in practice.
So yeah, and that's the search bar in the top right hand corner. If you type someone's name in, that should appear, and then you'll be able to click on them on there. And that give you the ability to
Yep,
give them
That's
feedback.
the bones of it. That's the bones of it. So Caroline's name would then show up instead of mine. And then under ePortfolio, you'd end up with something like back. Which is kind of my point.
Yep.
But yeah, I did. You can request feedback from an individual. Oh no, it's decided to show. Yeah, okay. But yeah, that's how you do it. You find the person in the search box, you select their name because it'll do a bit of a recognition. And then that's when you'll get a box showing up something like this. And that's where you can physically attach your evaluation form as you would on an email by clicking on this paperclip, dropping in your file and then posting. And then that should then show on the individual's probably. Yeah.
Thanks, Christina. Any questions?
Okay. Any? Yeah.
So we all running out here to sort out our pathways and then send me a request for speeches for the next 4 meetings. Stunned silence. Right.
I think so. Is there any like other insights, like, because you've done 3 levels now, haven't you? That's a lot more than anyone in this call.
I think the only reason I've done 3 is because I've been in a position where it's that whole picking up speeches on the last minute type thing or a week before. Like we're trying to get into the habit now of having an extra speaker or because otherwise we end up with, I get upset if we have holes in our agenda because I get upset about silly things. So certainly, between you, me, and the gatepost, I'm going to stop recording. We stop recording, so I don't know what to say. I would suggest, or it's quite useful to have speeches lined up, just in case, because people do fall out, or there's roadworks, or there's stop at work, all that sort of stuff.